title that's been given to me is the Magdalene Prophecies, and it is literally being given to me. And so what's all this got to do with Mary Magdalene, and, you know, what's it all about? Well, the whole thing for me started about 10 years ago exactly, and in a very unlikely place called Santa Fe in New Mexico. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. Yeah, and I was actually out there for a conference on science. You probably know me as the punk science lady, yeah? So I've had a scientific background. I trained as a GP. I worked as a medical GP. And just before I was about to sit my GP exams, I actually went out to this conference in New Mexico. And I'd been sort of spiritually aware at that point for a number of years, since 1992. So this is 2001. And so although I was living this sort of scientific medical life, I still was out there spiritually doing all these things. So this conference in New Mexico was called the Science and Consciousness Conference, and it brought together mystics and scientists. It was a very amazing conference. And this lady here, we can go, Jenna Schulman, her name is. This is how we looked back then, by the way. And so this lady here persuaded me to come to her adobe in Santa Fe for the last night. So she said, don't stay at the hotel. We'd met at the conference, we'd hit it off. And she said, come with me and we'll we'll just hang out for your last night in New Mexico. So I did. I was a bit sort of aware, thinking, I don't know this woman, I'm going to her house, am I going to get to my flight tomorrow? But I went along. And so we got to her adobe in the Santa Fe Hills, and we were chatting. And we decided during the evening just to go out to get a curry, as you do. And as we actually set out, just, on the way to the car from her adobe, something very, very weird happened. I've tried to get the best picture that I can to sort of represent. But suddenly, here's Hindu girl and here's Jewish girl, and we suddenly transformed into Mary Magdalene and the women going to the tomb. And we just totally shapeshifted out of the blue. Didn't know where it was coming from. For me, Mary Magdalene at that point, this is pre-Da Vinci Code. So Mary Magdalene at this point was a completely vague figure in the Christian Bible, not brought up as a Christian. I'd studied it in school and things like that. So it was all a bit strange, and we both felt it. We managed to get out and have our curry, and, which Gary is very pleased about. Then we came back and it all started again. And Jenna and I refer to this as that night. We just met, and we just call it that night because we just can't explain it. All night there was energy coming through me. She wasn't trained as a healer at that point. She put her hands on me, and we would both know what energy was coming through me. Like, it was just like something would be named, like dolphins or something. And then at the same time, the music that she happened to be playing was in sync with us. It wasn't the music came first. It's really, really hard to describe. And then went on for about until 3 o'clock in the morning. I had to get up to go to get my flight at 5. So we were cutting it a bit fine. And we still can't explain what happened. And all night we just got visions and visions and visions. Both of us were tuning in to the same visions. I saw lots and lots of different things, including the Mother of Jesus. Looks very different from any depiction I've ever seen. So it's kind of like, what do you do with it? Here I am, a GP, doling out prescriptions every day, Went back to England, did my GP exams. We've kind of sort of put it aside. So didn't really know what to make of it. This is 2001. Except later on that year, started happening again. And so some rather strange things started to happen. And I went to visit a friend of mine in the autumn of 2001. She immediately got there. She actually had a phone call from somebody. She went off to take the phone call, leaving me in a room with music of Hildegard of Bingen. Has anybody heard of that? So I was suddenly confronted with this amazing music. I'd never heard it before. By the time she came back from her phone call, I was gone. I was completely in an altered state. And there were angels and there were all sorts of things happening. And basically, we both started to have in tandem, this is a different friend, the same visions. And one of those visions was that I was with a group of people as a young boy. And it's a bit strange, but this young boy had blonde curly hair, and I've got a picture of people in that part of the world actually sometimes can have blonde curly hair. So I could see this young boy breaking away from the crowd and trying to attack a Roman soldier. And I was thinking to myself, this is definitely something I've seen in a film, because I've always known that this happened. And she goes, no, this isn't in the film. I go, no, Jesus Christ Superstar, it happened, it must have been in that movie. She's going, no, this has not happened in a movie. It's not happened in a movie. I was going, but I've always known this. And so basically, we both, again, had this tandem vision where we saw this young boy of about 19 attacking this Roman soldier, and then basically he was taken by the soldier. So I'm just to show that people in that part of the world actually sometimes do have blonde curly hair, and a bit older than that, this boy. And basically he was taken and he was put. My arm in her living room was doing this. I couldn't control it at all. And we both saw that this was happening overnight. That was left over there overnight. So it was as if the Roman soldiers took me as a lesson for trying to stop them and pinned me to the cross overnight. And I was there for about, I don't know, a minute with my arm, 2 minutes. By the time I took my arm down, it was like it had been there all night. It was aching so much. And really couldn't understand what was going on. So I just went, well, I've come here for a meeting. I didn't expect all this to happen. And I quickly went out of the room, but couldn't get away from it, because I went into her kitchen, and then suddenly I realised I was back in procession and we were transported again. And this time I was transported to a time previous to the crucifixion. And I was actually basically, all I can say was like a mystery school, what we would call a mystery school. And looking at the sort of teachings of a mystery school, and then in walks Mary Magdalene. And so I have never in my life met someone with that much power, a woman with that much power, because in our society, we see women as powerful if they're quite masculine. They're quite in their male dominant energy, and they go, this was not like that at all. She was scientific. She knew about sacred geometry, the sort of science that we've all forgotten about now. And she was just one powerful woman. And this young boy knew who she was. And as young boys do, this boy was about 19, was kind of like, it's Mary Magdalene. Keep cool, that sort of thing. And for me, that was kind of weird, because I've not been a young boy in this lifetime. So I was like, oh, that's how guys act, isn't it? So all his emotions were sort of going through me. And I was, at this point, I'd never heard of Essenes. I'd never heard of the Gnostic Gospels. I had not heard of any of this. It was completely new to me. So it was like, okay, what is going on? So there was some sort of initiation. And as you guys know, I've put this aside and I went off and wrote punk science. I've written the Genius Group. They're not about this subject at all. So this is the first time I'm talking about this stuff that's happened to me for 10 years. So is this interesting for people? All right. Yeah? Okay. I don't know. I mean, you're looking a bit sort of either enthralled or very bored. So, okay. So you have this rebel boy, and he's in this mystery school, and he tries to attack a Roman soldier in a crucifixion. I really had no idea. It wasn't raining, by the way. Very clearly wasn't raining. I mean, it doesn't rain that often in that time. So, cut forward to 2003, about this time, the Da Vinci Code has just been published. So, it's been published in the US, not in the UK, and it's actually starting to get a little bit of attention in the US, word of mouth. Definitely not the phenomena it was, and I at that point had not actually read it, and I didn't know all that much about it. Vague things, and of course in between I'm kind of like going, what is this Magdalene stuff? So I started to look into it again. But in 2003 I had another, and I'm sorry for this this picture, but it's the only one I could find. But basically I was going to sleep, and then suddenly I was transported back into Mary Magdalene's consciousness when she was giving birth. And this is what I saw. I saw this sort of pregnancy bump, and I saw her feet at the end of it, and she was wearing black. So this is the closest I could find to the sort of view. But if you can imagine, it was not... sorry if this is quite... I haven't asked if anybody's very, very devout Christian in the room, but sorry if this is a bit offensive, but I'm just telling you what I've actually saw. So, so suddenly I was inside her consciousness when she was giving birth. And out of the blue, didn't know what this was all about, and going, okay, and I could hear her language of her thoughts, but it was being translated instantaneously into English. So I was basically hearing the ultimate consciousness that is underlying the universe. So I was hearing it in English, but I could also sense that her thoughts were in a different language. It was totally unfamiliar to me, but suddenly I understood it. Does that make sense to people? So, and the other thing is, I'm a doctor in this life. So I'm not saying that I was Mary Magdalene in the past life. That's not at all what I'm saying. I was very clearly me hitching a ride. So I could feel her body, what was going on. So she was pushing this baby out. And so I could feel all the things happening in her hips and everything. And that her hips were a bit laxer. And she was thinking to herself, it's a bit easier this time around, in the language that she was thinking. And I am a doctor, and I was thinking this woman's a multip, which is the medical term for someone who's already had a pregnancy and birth. So I was definitely clearly myself. And then after the birth, very strangely, this man comes in, very young, about 22, that sort, can't be older than that, had a thin beard, and I remember looking at him through her eyes and thinking, this is not the father, but he has a very, very close bond with this woman. To be let into the room after she'd given birth in those days, he must have been very, very close. Don't know who it was.